Hi everyone, and welcome back to Learning Kitchen Live. My name is Valerie. I'm one of the dietitians here at Community Servings, and I'm very excited to be back again this week. And today we have a really fun recipe called Mini Eggplant Pizza Bites. And the inspiration for this recipe is that this coming Sunday, February 12th, is Super Bowl Sunday. And whether or not you're invested in the game, there's often some kind of celebration going on. And again, the inspiration for this was perhaps something on the slightly lighter or healthier side that you could prepare, serve to guests, or honestly, you could eat this recipe anytime. This would make a wonderful lunch or dinner with a side salad. So it's pretty versatile and really tasty and super easy too. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. The first step with this recipe is to actually cut up an eggplant and have it ready to go in the oven. So what I did beforehand, just in the interest of time, is I have an eggplant, just one like regular globe eggplant, cut into about 12-ish pieces. They're maybe like a half to 3/4 of an inch in thickness. I sprayed this baking pan with cooking spray, and then I just took a brush and basted the eggplant pieces on both sides with olive oil. So that's done already. And if you don't have a brush like this, you can just use your fingers, a paper towel, whatever you can, just to coat it with olive oil so it gets nice and crispy in the oven. So the eggplant is going to be the base of our pizza instead of a pizza shell or pizza crust. So what I'm going to do is put this in the oven at 375 degrees for in a regular oven, it would be for probably about 25 minutes. What you're looking for is for the eggplant to get nice and soft and a little bit golden brown. In our turbocharged ovens here at Community Servings, it's going to be about 10 minutes. So, sorry, one of my colleagues is going to set the timer for me. So, what we want to do next is make the sauce to go on top. And I am going to make a sauce, a little tomato sauce from scratch, which is super easy, and you can use this on anything. But if you were really like looking to save time, you could definitely use bottled pasta sauce, marinara sauce, pizza sauce, anything like that. One of the reasons, and you hear us say this quite often on Learning Kitchen Live, so one of the reasons to make this yourself is because you can control for the sodium, the sugar, the seasoning, all of that. And that's one of the reasons I like making it from scratch. So to do this, I'm going to heat up about a tablespoon of olive oil, and I just have a nonstick skillet here. And I am going to add, I have 3 cloves of garlic that I've minced. And what I'm going to use for this dish is petite diced tomatoes. And I accidentally bought the ones that have garlic and olive oil in them, but I love garlic. I will double garlic in any recipe anytime. But this is actually a great solution for adding flavoring to using the diced tomatoes. So this is almost like a ready-made pasta sauce here. It needs a little bit of seasoning just to bring it to life a little bit, but it's great. My preference is always no salt added diced tomatoes. The last time I did Learning Kitchen Live, I actually had those. I was able to find them in the grocery store, went back to the same store this past weekend and could not find them. So it's a little hit or miss, but when you use the no salt added diced tomatoes, you just can control the seasoning and the sodium content that much more. All right, so I have my olive oil heated up here. I'm going to let this garlic cook for like 30 seconds. You don't want it to burn. You just want it to start giving off some flavor and get a little toasty. So something else you could use too is whole tomatoes packed in juice. The diced tomatoes are super easy. They do have like some stabilizers added to them anytime you buy like a diced tomato, just to help them keep their shape while they're in the can. So if you don't want that, you can just use whole tomatoes and crush them up in the pan a little bit. All right. You can't smell this, but very quickly my garlic is fragrant. And again, you don't want it to burn, so I'm going to add my diced tomatoes. And just stir that up. And then for a little bit of extra flavor, I'm going to add some dry oregano and dry Italian seasoning. Again, this is optional. If you don't like these or you like some other seasonings in your pasta sauce or your pizza toppings, go ahead and do that. You could even add some crushed red pepper flakes to this because to give it a little heat if you'd like. I probably should have done that because I always like adding a little spice. So a quarter teaspoon of oregano, a half a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. What I have found is that with the diced tomatoes that are not no salt added, there's often enough seasoning in them that I don't even need to add salt to it. But that is, of course, you know, a personal preference. We're also going to be adding some Parmesan cheese and mozzarella cheese on top of this, which adds a lot of saltiness too. So I would tread lightly with the salt. So one of the things, this original recipe is actually a Julia Child recipe, who's, if you don't know, she's a famous French chef and cookbook author. And this came from one of her first cookbooks, and I think it's probably been adapted over time. But the original recipe has you salting the eggplant and letting it sit for about 30 minutes before using it and putting it in the oven. And I did a little research on this because I also have some eggplant-based recipes at home, and many of them say to salt the eggplant. And what I learned was that the salting of the eggplant originally was like 100 years ago to pull some of the bitterness out of the eggplant. But today's eggplants, especially the big globe ones that you buy in the grocery store, they are bred to be not bitter. So that's not so much a problem with eggplant anymore. What salting will do is draw some of the moisture out. So if you put those eggplant slices out on a baking sheet, salted them, let them sit for about 30 minutes, you'd see moisture pulling out, and then the original instructions say to dab them with a paper towel to get that moisture off. I think that it's not a step you have to cut out, but in the interest of time, I cut it out, and you will see that this actually turns out just fine without doing that, and then it's also not the added sodium. So I think salting an eggplant or salting your eggplant before you cook with it is totally fine to do, but I don't actually think it's so necessary anymore. So the whole point of cooking this in the pan beforehand, besides giving it a little bit of extra seasoning, is to maybe get a little of the moisture out of the tomatoes, which we're doing. I'm just going to let this simmer. And in another minute or two, my eggplants will be done, and we will assemble these and put them back in the oven for a few minutes. So this, I don't know that this is a stand around in a party and eat it with your hands type of appetizer, but it's definitely a good appetizer for a party. I think it has wide appeal. If you're serving to people who can't eat gluten, it's gluten-free, and it's lower in fat and sodium. It's all around, and it's really low in carbs, so it's all around a really healthy choice. All right, I'm going to check my eggplant, and we'll be ready to assemble this in a minute. So my eggplant, like I said, has been in the oven for here just shy of 10 minutes. Again, on a home stove, you would probably need to have it in the oven for more like 25 minutes. And it's just lightly golden brown on both sides by now. And now we're going to assemble these like you would any pizza. So I'm going to put a little bit of the tomato sauce on top of each eggplant slice. Wish you could smell how good this smells. You know, if you don't care for eggplant, and I feel like there are a fair amount of people out there who don't love eggplant, you could easily do this um, you could buy pre-made pizza shells, like there's Boboli, there's tons of store brands, and cut them into smaller pieces and make these. You could also use whole wheat pita bread, like the little mini 4-inch pita breads, and then cut them before serving. So those would all be great options if you were not a fan of eggplant, but yet wanted to make something like this. All right. Last little pieces here. Okay. I'm going to put a little bit of part skim mozzarella cheese on top. You could use any shredded Italian blend that you wanted. This is part skim mozzarella. What I would stay away from is like the extra low fat or fat free shredded mozzarella. I personally don't love the flavor of it, but also it doesn't melt really well. So you want, this is a better bet. And you're actually you don't really need to use that much with these. Okay, almost done. And then the last thing is to sprinkle these with a little bit of Parmesan cheese, which just gives it a little extra flavor. The recipe calls for about 1/3 of a cup total, which I think is more than enough. And you could also skip this if it was not interesting to you. You know, you could also make like a southwestern version of this if you wanted to, by using the eggplant, putting some salsa and then like some cheddar cheese and even some like sliced up scallions on top. That would be a really nice riff on this as well. But this is going to go back in the oven for about like 5 minutes. And in the meantime, what we have to show here is the finished product through the magic of television. And we made this ahead of time just to make sure we had a finished product to show. And, you know, again, the eggplant is nice and brown and they look like little mini pizzas. And this would be a wonderful thing to serve up at a Super Bowl party or really anytime. Again, this with a side salad, this would make a lovely dinner as well. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed this. We hope you try this recipe. And if you do, please leave a comment so we know you did. And thanks for coming back and watching Learning Kitchen Live. We'll see you next week.